Could one grainy clip really decide the fate of one of the world's most powerful music moguls? Picture this: a hush rippling through the courtroom as the video flickers to life on the screen, Cassie's trembling hands slipping the glowing phone back and forth, Diddy's silhouette looming like a storm cloud just beyond her reach. In those few raw seconds, every juror's eyes widen, every whispered conversation stalls, and you realize you've become part of something bigger than just a trial. You're witnessing a moment that will be dissected for years to come. But what was recorded in that hallway and suite goes far beyond a simple argument. It's a visceral, unvarnished window into a relationship's darkest fracture. By the time you hear the full story of Room 604, the frantic phone call for help, the unspoken tension, the sound of the vase shattering against the marble, you won't just remember a clip. You'll feel it in your chest, echoing long after the screen goes black. And that, right there, is the power of this tape. It doesn't just inform, it implicates, it unsettles, it forces you to choose a side before you even know the entire tale. So lean in close, because once you've seen it, your perspective on fame, power, and accountability will never look the same again. When the gavel fell on the first day of Diddy's trial, the energy in the courthouse was electric. Reporters jockeyed for the best vantage point, social feeds exploded with hashtags, and inside the packed gallery, you could almost hear the collective intake of breath as opening statements began. The prosecution painted a stark picture of violence and control, while the defense countered with questions of context and consent. Yet amid all the legal jargon and solemn declarations, one fact stood out: only 2 witnesses would take the stand. First up was the on-duty LAPD officer turned luxury hotel security guard, a man whose career once depended on upholding the law, until his night at the Intercontinental tested his judgment and loyalty. Next, the male escort whose footage would become the trial's linchpin, a bystander who suddenly found himself at the epicenter of a media maelstrom. It's a slim witness list in a case flooded with allegations, but this tight roster meant that every uttered word and every piece of evidence carried immense weight. As attorneys traded barbs, the jury leaned forward, straining to catch every nuance, every hesitation. And while spectators on the outside debated motives and merits, inside that courtroom, the emotional undercurrent was palpable. This wasn't just about celebrity. It was about truth and the limits of power when unfiltered video evidence enters the fray. The most critical testimony came from a figure few in the public knew by name, the Intercontinental Hotel's head of security in March 2016. He arrived on the 6th floor after hearing a frantic call from Cassie, who, powers of fame aside, was just a woman seeking help, dialing 911 in the lobby hallway outside the elevators, her voice cracking with urgency. He confessed under oath that he hadn't anticipated violence. He was on autopilot, responding to a routine distress call. But as soon as he saw Diddy and Cassie locked in a heated exchange, his instincts kicked in. He insisted they return to the suite to defuse the situation, walking them back through the ornate corridors until they reached the door. There, through a sliver of the ajar suite door, he spotted something that didn't make it into his official incident report: a shadowy figure in dark clothing sitting on the bed. That detail, trivial at the time, suddenly became monumental when contrasted with the defense's later narrative. Under cross-examination, the guard admitted he hadn't thought the mysterious third person important enough to note, until now. His credibility hung in the balance as defense attorneys probed every omission. Why no mention of Cassie's bruised eye? Why no record of the offer to call the police? The exchange laid bare the fragility of memory, and the fact that what's left out of a report can sometimes speak louder than what's included. From the very start, Diddy's legal team worked to recast the tape's violent overtones into something more familiar: an intense, jealous spat between 2 consenting adults. They argued that what prosecutors branded a freak-off was merely a heated argument sparked by a phone screen, Cassie's insistence on leaving mixed with Diddy's refusal to let her go. They pointed to the lit-up phone in Diddy's hand as supposed proof of mutual engagement, a smartphone spotlight suggesting collaboration, not coercion. They emphasized that Cassie handed over her device without visible resistance, claiming her compliance undermined any allegation of force. They highlighted moments of laughter, like when Diddy quipped about his shiny shoes, suggesting he wasn't in a violent rage but caught up in the drama of a relationship's low point. Through carefully selected clips and expert testimony, they wove a narrative of context over caricature, of love gone wrong rather than a power trip. Yet the more they leaned into this framing, the more critics questioned: if it was consensual, why scrub the footage so zealously? Why did Cassie's team need to deploy internal hotel security and even a personal escort for protection afterward? The defense's spin was slick, but the undercurrent of doubt it unleashed set the stage for a courtroom battle over memory, motive, and the meaning of consent. When Brian Steele, Diddy's seasoned cross-examiner, stepped up for the defense, the tension spiked. He methodically dismantled the guard's credibility, highlighting gaps in his report that begged questions. Why wasn't Cassie's bruised eye visible enough to stop you in your tracks? Not mentioned. Steele pressed. Why omit the man in dark clothes on the bed? The guard's answers stumbled. At the time, these details didn't seem significant, he said. But 9 years later, under the glare of the stand, every omission felt like an act of concealment. Steele's stiletto-sharp questioning painted the guard as a reluctant protector torn between duty and loyalty, someone who recorded the chaos on his phone not to document facts, but to make sure his wife would believe what he'd seen. The admission blew open the defense's narrative. If the guard himself found the scene unbelievable, how could consent be assumed? Steele's relentless focus on what was missing in writing, and what was captured in shaky phone footage, forced jurors to grapple with the tension between human memory and incontrovertible video. By the time Steele sat down, the jury had witnessed a live demonstration of doubt. Even those sworn to uphold the truth can be swayed by selective recollection. When the contested footage finally played in court, there was no escaping its impact. The vase shattering against marble wasn't just a loud crack, it was a fracture in the facade of celebrity invincibility. Cassie's desperate attempts to pull her arm away, her voice breaking as she pleaded, formed an indelible contrast to the defense's portrayal of a consensual spat. Jurors, accustomed to polished celebrity statements and choreographed PR, were confronted with a raw, uncut reality, one in which power imbalances played out in real time. The defense argues context is king, yet here, context was stripped bare. No special effects, no soundstage lighting, just a stark interplay of fear and force. Psychology experts will tell you that once the brain encodes such visceral imagery, it becomes the anchor for subsequent deliberations. Every time the defense pushes back, she opted to record, she handed over her phone, she deleted footage later, those visual memories cling harder. The clip doesn't just augment the written record, it redefines the case's emotional core. It forces jurors and the public alike to ask, can fame shield you from accountability when unfiltered evidence is so damning? If day 1 shook the courtroom, day 2 promises to shatter it. Kathy, Cassie's friend and eyewitness, will take the stand next, and the optics couldn't be more striking. Word on the street is she's due in early June, meaning a visibly pregnant woman could recount allegations of abuse under the harsh glare of courtroom lights. The contrast between Kathy's vulnerability and Diddy's formidable presence could forge a narrative bridge between empathy and outrage. Rumors suggest her testimony will include audio recordings and additional footage that further complicates the defense's context over coercion argument. Meanwhile, both sides are gearing up expert witnesses, one to testify on the nuances of domestic violence dynamics, the other on the interpretive value of video evidence. As we count down to that pivotal moment, remember, it's not just what's said, but who says it and how it's perceived. The trial is a live demonstration of power, perception, and the unblinking lens of a camera. In a fractured world where even fame isn't flawless, the next chapter of this saga could redefine accountability in the digital age. Stay tuned, because the clock is ticking, and every second of testimony could tip the scales toward an outcome that reverberates far beyond the courthouse walls.